From WSL Pure, this is One Ocean. Hello and welcome back. I'm Reese and I'm excited to share this week's episode with you. Our guest this week is Léa Brassy, who is as impressive out of the water as she is in it. In the water, she is an accomplished surfer, sailor, spearfisher woman, and all-around water woman of the highest order. Léa is also incredibly impressive in our conversation here. I first met Léa over some beers in France at a Patagonia event in Hossegor in 2018. And when we started talking about the Glowing Gone campaign for coral reefs in Tahiti last year, Léa was one of the first people I called because she's been living there on a boat for years now. She was so kind and helpful as we prepared the project, and when we landed, she was a great guide, joining our coral restoration project, directing us to the best bakery on the island, and taking us out for a surf at a secluded spot. I found Léa to have this tremendous strength of character combined with this ultra self-awareness, and she is highly in tune with her surroundings. It's really, really cool to see. We spoke at length about the importance of community, the power of social media and the environmental movement, living sustainably and self-sufficiently, and more from her humble apartment in Tahiti. Here's Léa Brassy. What is your name and who are you?
My name is Léa Brassy. I'm a surfer, freediver, and a spearfisher woman from France. And I live half the time in France and half the time in Tahiti, in French Polynesia. I am dedicated to raise awareness to protect our environment, and I am supported by Patagonia, one of the surf ambassadors. Basically, I live my passions on a daily basis, and I try to share the values that made me where I am today with the people that like what I do.
Amazing. Now, a lot of podcasts will start out with lots more of the history of how did you get into this and when did you get started surfing and all those things, but I actually want to go right into a harder question right off the bat. If you could go back in time and change one thing in history, what would it be and why?
In the world's history?
Yeah, world history. If you could go back in time, you know, whatever it is, you could stop something, start something.
That's a good question.
It's a favorite question of mine, and I've asked it of friends the world over, and I love to see the different responses.
I think before colonization, if I could not undo, but if every places could have remained as genuine as they were before colonization, then we would have so many different types of people, types of cultures, so many different ways to look at the world, to look at nature. We'd have so many more sources of inspiration to live differently, and I would give credit to those like me who think we need to live in a different pace and value different things. So yeah, I would sink those ships basically.
But that's funny because you're a sailor, so right? I mean, you sailed, you lived on a boat here in Tahiti for a while, so you want to prevent sailing from ever existing.
Not that I want to prevent sailing from ever existing. I want to prevent people from changing others' cultures and thinking they're better, they're stronger, thinking they want to win all the time or they want to be superior. I think that's what I would like to change.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's an interesting thread to go down because colonialism kind of is, it's resource extraction, right? It's saying we in this colony do not have enough of whatever thing, or we found some other thing in another place and we want to exploit that resource and take it from there and bring it back here instead of living sustainably within your means. Now, at the same token, colonization has led to the spreading of culture and the growth of so many things and advancement of society. So there's definitely plus sides to it too. But yeah, it's certainly created a system which maybe isn't as sustainable and doesn't leave a lot of cultures untouched. And so on that note, we're here in Tahiti. You come from France, but you've been here for years now and been a part of the culture. Tell us what's so special about the culture here. What brought you here and what parts of this place are still untouched, and what changes have you maybe seen that you think are not so positive?
What made me come here is the ocean. I came here for surfing, and after I also came here for diving. and then it's mesmerizing. It's like nothing else. It's I like to say like it's a dream of the big blue. It's like a big blue dream of my childhood. I guess I'm not the only one, but and this dream you can really live it here on a daily basis. You can surf, you can fish your own fish, you can share it with your friends and family. You can live off the ocean basically, and that's something you don't do in so many places in an healthy way. And so this kept me over here because I felt like I had something in common with these people, that I valued those very simple things that are harvesting from the ocean and having fun in the ocean. And I just wanted more of it because it felt real to me, basically. And I think that's what people have right over here, is that they value their own resources and the beauty of their environment, and it makes them very happy on a daily basis. It's not about in 2 months, not about in 2 years or 20 years. It's about now, and it's about like sharing on the moment with the ones around you. So they have it very right. But in the same time, that also means it's hard to protect a resource for the future, because you think a lot about today. And that's kind of why it's interesting to bring also people from other cultures to actually highlight the fact that this resource is not necessarily going to last forever. You know, it's not necessarily something that's going to be provided by nature forever either. And there are places in the world where it's not existing anymore, and we can't have that lifestyle anymore. So it's worth protecting it. And I think that's why like the foreigner influence in French Polynesia is interesting as well.
What do you mean?
Because I think like the tourism, when you bring tourism and all these people that are just totally not believing everything they see, because it's just so much fish, so much beauty, so much colors, and it blows everybody's mind, you know. It's overwhelming of emotions, of sensations, and that when tourists like that, or like just foreigners like that, can talk about their experience, it kind of like shows that it's not something you leave somewhere else, you know, and it needs protection, you know, and it's just it'd be easy to abuse of the resource for the sake of now, but you also have to think about the sake of tomorrow and the happiness that it will bring and the harmony it will bring in the future for your children and your grandchildren eventually.
For sure. So let's dive into the beauty of this place. So you moved here 5 years ago, and at first you were living on a boat, right?
No, at first I took a position as a nurse in an atoll of the Tuamotu.
Okay.
So I worked on the little nursery. I don't know. It's a very small like healthcare unit.
Okay.
I worked there, and then I was diving a lot. There wasn't any surfing, but I was diving a lot. And it was interesting because in the same time I was the stereotype of colonization, because I was with my white shirt, I was talking about European or Western medicine, you know, and on the other end, I was diving with the guys. I was like providing my own fish. Oftentimes I had a lot more and I would give to people, you know, and that was kind of upside down for like how it works over there. And it was very interesting for me because I could tell at the beginning I wasn't part of the community. Although I had a lot of respect for like the traditional medicine, I just, for a reason of liability, I could not practice it, you know. That's just what I had in my hands, was like the Western way to treat disease and illness. And but once I started getting the respect and like the confidence of the people underwater, my place in the community totally changed. And from like being the nurse, I just became Léa as a person with like different faces, you know. And it was a very beautiful experience for me. Then I realized how much being part of the community was important to me. I could be traveling to the most pristine places, surfing the most pristine waves and catching the most amazing fish, like looking at a wonderful sky of stars. It was cool, but what's really cool is to do all of that with the backup of the the local community, to feel like you are actually bringing something and you're actually adding value to the experience over there and not only taking. And that was a very big turning point for me in my life as a traveler, like my life on the road for very many years. It was a very big turning point.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you moved here full time, or at least most of the time?
I kind of alternate between France and Tahiti.
Yeah.
So depending on the projects, but I'm like half of the year in France and half of the year in Tahiti, more or less.
Yeah. So, and then you lived on a boat, and you really became more known as a spearfisher woman, right? And or freediver. Did that kind of took over for you, or you just spending more and more time on the reef? Was it because you were hunting for your food, or just a desire to be out and be connected to nature? What was driving that? And I'd just love to learn more about your experience there, just being in and around this environment and living that close to nature.
The sailing part was a dream of mine since I was a kid. Before even surfing, I wanted to sail. So it was it made sense. It was kind of natural I bought a very small sailboat and I was living in it. It was more like camping, really. And did a little sailing experience and learned to repair a bunch of stuff. And I was very happy to learn all these skills. It was a very tiring life though. And I wanted to be to spend more time doing my passions rather than working on the boat. I have a lot of respect for people who do that full time. And eventually I'll go back to it when I'll get older. But for now, I just had so much more to do with my passions that are my core passions, like surfing. And so diving became a very core passion to me because it's hard to explain. It's just something that talked to my guts right away. It's something I think I was missing, some kind of peace, of inside satisfaction maybe. I was afraid to put my head underwater until my friend Kimi Werner introduced me to freediving.
Wait, you were afraid to put your head underwater?
Yeah, I was afraid.
But you already were a surfer, weren't you? Didn't you start surfing in your youth?
I started surfing when I was 11, but I was afraid of the world underwater, and especially maybe murky water, and it was a mystery to me. I just wasn't very confident, and I think a lot of surfers can feel that. It's not necessarily, it's two different things. Being on the surface and being underwater is different, I think. That's the answer I had when I started diving and be a bit deeper. I just realized it was a different world, but it was my world actually, and it felt very familiar to me for some reason. I don't know.
And that was freediving?
That was freediving.
Yeah.
I think there is something about, is it fasting we say, when we don't eat for a little bit?
Yep.
It's like fasting, but with air. And air is the first need you need to fulfill.
Yeah.
So it's kind of putting everything on hold for a little bit and listening to what's happening within you, within your body, within your brain. And I just love that exercise with my own brain to actually disconnect and find a new world to be in order to be able to fast air, if it makes sense. It's
kind of.
It's out there, I know.
I mean, I like trying to train and hold my breath a little bit just for a little bit of training here and there. And I understand that you do have to, it's that first urge that your body just goes, I need air, right? We're used to every, just breathing rhythmically. It's the thing we all do so naturally. And then when you first go, oh no, we're not going to do that right now. We're going to stay down here below the surface. And, yesterday when we were in the water, I did notice at one point you grabbed a rock and sat on the bottom. Everyone else is swimming around and doing their thing and looking at coral. And then at some point you just grabbed a rock and just sat there on the bottom for a little while. And I was like, I wonder how long she's going to hang down there. And there you were fighting that first urge but you looked so peaceful in that moment, which was really impressive.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
That's so cool. So you start diving and seeing what's beneath. And I think that's really interesting for a couple reasons. One, I think it's really interesting that you through free diving, got more in touch with nature or learned what's below. I think for so many surfers, it's kind of, some people, they just go out and they surf and it's, yeah, I surfed, I caught some waves and that was great and whatever. And I don't even want to think about what's below. And then there are some people who go out there and they want to, snorkel the reef and understand what the bathymetry is, to understand how it makes a wave. But there's a whole next level of looking at a habitat or an ecosystem and understanding, what it can or can't provide, what it looks like. And I think that's one of the things we connected about early on when I was asking you about the reefs here in Tahiti. You said, "Oh, I've seen what they look like. You've been down there. You've been diving these reefs for a while. So I'd love to know. We all hear the stats and we see the articles of the Great Barrier Reef is bleaching and da 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 da. But what have you seen with your own eyes? I mean, you're connected to it here in Tahiti.
I've seen coral bleaching every season when the seawater temperature is warmer, and sometimes it gets like really warm. And you see the change within a week, sometimes.
In a week, really?
It can really like bleach very quickly.
Wow.
And it's a disturbing feeling. Something is wrong. And it to me, it's something that goes straight in my belly, It's like, I don't feel good about it. I don't feel proud about it, It's not because it's a very symbolic change in nature, because it's not one thing you can change. It's all about like, it's the global warming, like ocean acidification and seawater temperature rising that's responsible for it. That means that it's anything and everything, that we do as human beings on this planet. And it's not like if there is a switch that we could turn off and on and the coral is alive again and healthy again, It's just a real proof of everything else that is not quite right in this world. And so yeah, it hurts. It hurts me when I see that. And we always have the hope that when the temperature goes down, then eventually the coral is going to recover. So that's kind of like always the optimistic way to look at it. But it's not totally true either. So it's a big problem. But I also have that in like anytime I see nature being spoiled in a way that's not fixable, it just gets straight to my belly and it's painful.
That totally resonates. Although I'll ask, you said when you first saw bleaching, it went right to your gut. Did you know that bleaching and those corals that were those kind of bright colors or bright white, did you know that those were dead corals right away? Because I feel like one of the things I've run into are many people who, you can show them photos of corals and they go, "Oh, beautiful." Mm. And you're like, actually, that one's dying or that one's dead.
Yeah.
And that's one of the interesting things about the Glowing Gone campaign that we're running is that, you have these incredible colors and people go, "Wow, that's gorgeous."
But they're not beautiful. They're waving a flag.
Yeah, exactly. The coral's saying, "Look at me."
Yeah, yeah.
And so you said you knew right away just because of the change, because it was that drastic, or is it because you were informed already?
Yeah, no, it is thanks to a friend of mine. I was diving on a daily basis. It's the year I was a nurse on the atoll, and I noticed the coral bleaching, and I talked about it with a friend of mine. I was a scuba diver, and that's when he gave me the news that it was the second year only that they were witnessing it in that area, and he wasn't crying, but he was about to. So he just instantly told me, so I didn't even have to like look for information. He was right there, like, we need to do something about it,
Yeah.
And he was like counting all the corals, and he was like surveying the area, and he was doing a great job. There are people out there that are so passionate that don't ask for anything or don't wait for anybody to actually do their own map of the situation. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think that's a great segue into, the reason we're kind of here and having this conversation, the reason I'm here in Tahiti. We have our event here in the Tahiti Pro, and the WSL has used it as a mechanism to talk about coral bleaching and talk about coral reefs. And so we're pretty excited about that campaign. But we wanted to go beyond the awareness. The Glowing Gone campaign is incredible in raising awareness, and colors are really fascinating. And it was really cool to see the surfers' reactions to the jerseys today. We showed them their jerseys all one-on-one, and they all went, "Whoa, these are the coolest jerseys!" And I mean, all the guys were just kind of, "Wow, these we should do this every event and change a jersey." And these are rad, versus
Awesome.
the usual red and blue, and which is cool. And they liked that there was a cause behind it, so that's all really positive. But we wanted to make sure that there was some impact there too, and so we wanted to support some of the local groups. And so one of them, Coral Gardeners, we identified, and we said, all right, who's around and who wants to go check them out? So that's how we got in touch, and you were here and said, I'm ready, I'm in.
Oh yeah,
which is amazing. Yeah, you didn't take much convincing, and so I was really appreciative to have you on the trip. Do you maybe want to tell us about the day and what we did with them, and a little bit about the Coral Gardeners?
Yeah, I've heard of them over here because they're a very dynamic NGO founded by like young local people, and I mean I had only heard good about it, and so I was stoked to go check it out with you guys. And that entire energy of, man, we need to do something. Like, let's do something together now in the place that we love so much, that's providing us with good surf, good fish, like beautiful underwater life. Let's protect it. And I just felt that energy transiting to me right away, and it was very empowering and very positive, and just it was so cool. And I could tell it was the same with the people around me, with the whole group that we were. Everybody was just getting like pumps up.
The stoke level was high. For sure.
Yeah, everybody was getting stoked and excited. So, and then after, like, just the technical parts it was beautiful to see nature being nurtured like that by like these young people with like the most care. And I loved how Titouan was like, look at this coral, she's like, it's beautiful. And I don't know, just like seeing how he like looks at the little crabs inside, he sees things that most people don't even look at,
Yeah.
And that I really appreciate. And I was very proud to be part of it, like to pick my coral and to name it and to just like participate. You just want to be, what it makes me feel is want to be part of the movement, I just want to be part of it, and I want everybody to be part of it. And it's not only by planting coral, but it's also like by everybody's lifestyle and behavior towards the environment.
Yeah. Hey guys, guess what? One of the nicest items of clothing I own also happens to have one of the lowest environmental footprints. That's right, check the stats on the reimagined cashmere sweater from Outerknown. 96% CO2 savings, H2O savings 92%, and energy savings of 82%. To achieve these insane numbers, Outerknown collects pre-consumer cashmere textile waste and spins it into the fresh fibers in their reimagined line. So I'm stoked on its eco qualities, but what's amazing is that there is zero sacrifice in the quality. This sweater is so soft and comfortable. Like, I just want an excuse to wear it soft. Like, my wife hugs me a whole lot longer soft. I really love this thing. Go to outerknown.com to check out the reimagined cashmere sweater in men's and women's. That's Outerknown. Outerknown, and remember to use the code OCEAN at checkout. You'll get 25% off. So there's your savings. Outerknown.com, and don't forget promo code OCEAN for 25% off. All right, back to the show. So I want to dive into that. I totally agree there. I want to dive deeper into the Coral Gardeners experience, because it was awesome. I have to admit. And Titouan, the founder. So you have this energetic young man. I think he's 21, I believe.
Crazy,
right?
yeah.
And he started this thing a couple of years ago, and he was so impatient. His parents sent him to college, and he just said, "No, I can't do this college crap. This is going to take too long. And if I want to save coral reefs, it's going to take me 7 years of school and blah blah blah." And he said, "No, I'm not. That's not it. I'm going to go back to Maria, and I'm just going to do this now." And I think that's what's so cool, is the sense of urgency.
Yeah. And
I think this young generation is really, they unfortunately just have this incredible sense of urgency because they have no other choice, really. I think sometimes the sort of adult generation loves to say, "Oh, we're so inspired by the youth, and that's so great. They're going to fix all the problems." And it's like, no. They have to. And we have to support them. And we can't just say, okay, it's on them, they'll fix the world. It's, we need to all act together. But I am getting a lot of inspiration out of Tituan. So Tituan founded Coral Gardeners, I think 2 years ago, started with nothing. It's just kind of he and a buddy in a room, kind of figured out how to make a plan. And so they have an Adopt a Coral program. And we went out there and visited with them. We had Michelle Perez, CT surfer, Matahi Drolet. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Drolet?
Yeah.
Yeah, my French is terrible, but I've been trying while I've been here. And Koa Smith with us. And we all went out and got to see their nursery and then pick a coral that had been nursed. They find corals that are broken on the sea floor and make sure that they don't get covered with sediment. And then you get to choose a coral, and they took a photo with us, right? Yeah, everyone got a photo. And then you have your adopted coral that you then plant on a reef, on like a dead section of reef that will hopefully help it survive. What'd you name your coral, by the way?
Hina.
Hina? What's that?
Hina is a goddess in Tahiti, and she's like courageous, and she's proud, and she's quite a woman.
Quite a woman.
She's quite a woman.
Nice. That's cool. And it was so fun to see how stoked the other guys got too. Michelle and Matahi, they were having a blast and joking around, and they were stoked on the corals looking healthy. And we're smiling about it now, just remembering it, because it was really fun. We also had crazy number of people and cameras in the water, but it was really inspiring. I think the other thing that was really fun about yesterday, again, looking at that generational gap, was Dr. Austin Bowden Kirby. And so for context, we at WSL Pure discovered Dr. Austin Bowden Kirby. He's this coral gardening expert who's been doing it for 30 odd years on Fiji. And he's just this expert in coral gardening. And we thought he was so inspirational and just doing great work that we brought him over to Moorea to help work with the coral gardeners, because they're so young and energetic, and they are doing things generally the right way. But we felt, well, why not bring this guy in who has all this expertise, and share it. And I thought that was such a fascinating thing to see. I don't know. I saw you all joking around, and he was sharing sargassum seaweed with everyone. And here, try this. And, if you eat seaweed, it'll help boost your testosterone and da-da-da. And he was just this wild guy, but you could see his work underwater. It was incredible.
Yeah. You can tell he's been experiencing those coral gardening for like 30 years. He has everything dialed, basically. And what I loved is that he showed a different way to grow coral and to restore coral to the coral gardeners, but he wasn't imposing himself. Like, he was just showing a different way. They prepared a Fijian table, as they say, so with like other techniques. And his way to value their work and his work and put them together into looking to the same direction. I love these people, because that's how you go further. That's how you just encouraging everything, instead of like, I have the solution, We need many solutions, as much as we need many people involved in all the different topics that talk about saving resources, right? And that man was... he's unique. He's got such a beautiful energy. He was just going faster and longer than anybody out there. He was getting everybody tired. It was so good to see.
It was hard to keep up with him. And Tituan is an energetic guy, and the coral gardeners are energetic kids. And yet here's, Austin he was going. He was in the water before we got there. He was in the water after we left. He basically lives out there. It was incredible. So it's really exciting. And I thought that was a proud moment, just kind of seeing that collaboration. I think that's what's really powerful. And
because you made this happen.
Pure made that happen, and that's what's cool about the WSL coming to town is, we have a platform, and so that platform being able to reach people, and I think it's a really positive thing that we do that, enables us to say, hey, here's this cool opportunity. We want to bring some people together to do something cool. Who's in? And generally people are in. They want to work together when we come together. Some of the people around the table at the WSL just say that our power is our ability to convene people, around our events and bringing people together. And I think that's a really strong thing. And I think that's why coral gardeners will be successful, because they're building a team and a community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we talked about this last night about community.
Yeah, you don't do anything by yourself, except maybe fulfilling your ego or something like that. But you don't achieve anything that's good for the community without a community. That's my point of view, at least. And I mean, as much as you as WSL is like, you are a community around surfing and like competitive surfing in the professional world and the top athletes out there. You're like building that community of people that are stoked about the evolution of the sport and pushing the boundaries. And well, Coral Gardener is building a community around young people that want to do something, or old people that want to do something to protect the marine resource in that area. And it's just so obvious, so easy to see that bringing people together, it's not just adding energy to somebody else's energy. It's like a multiplication. That's the only way really to do something strong, because it's hard to fight for those causes. A lot of people, unfortunately, they don't necessarily care. And sometimes you need to fight like ideas that just are despairing. And for that, you need your buddies, you need your friends to be there and like fight for it with you. It's important, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's an amazing point. It can be lonely work when you're out there just kind of battling, and
activism is a lonely work, and that's why you need a community of activists to actually get to your point.
For sure. Yeah, and it can be disheartening. I mean, you read the news, you pay attention to it, you go out, you dive a reef. I mean, yesterday we had that really fun, coral gardening in the morning, and then we went out for the afternoon and then saw some of the bleaching and saw some of the fluorescing. We saw some of the purples and the blues and the colors and the bleaching on the reef. And, we've heard that in the region that the reefs have bleached, around 50% of the reefs have bleached in the past few months. And so to see it, that was kind of a bummer. I actually, I wish we'd done the day the other way around. Let's go see the bad stuff and then let's have the fun.
Yeah.
Entree first and then dessert, but we went the other way around. But when you build a community around it, and you can kind of keep each other afloat, and I think that's what's really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that last night when we were driving back, you were talking about as well, about community and how that's a part of what you think is potentially a part of the climate solution.
Because I think that we are clearly facing an enormous environmental crisis, but I think in the same time, and it's probably linked, we're also facing a loss of sense in the humankind. I think a lot of our interactions are made with a medium that's nearly all the time a computer, a machine, or like some kind of artificial intelligence. And this is disconnecting us from each other. And it's allowing us to do things that we wouldn't do to each other if we were to do it face on face.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. Too much, maybe. And yeah, I think if we were to have more one-on-one interactions, starting from things we do on a daily basis, where we get our food, for instance, I think we would put more sense into those simple acts, and we would empower the people that make that food, for instance, to actually make it with pride and the same values. And if we do that and everybody makes the effort to do that, then somehow everyone is gonna do its best in his own field with his own skills, and every
his or hers.
Yeah.
Her own skills.
Sorry. You're challenging my English.
No, your English is perfect. I just want to make sure we're not just stuck on the male pronoun.
But whether it's a baker, whether it's somebody who provides, a service with a builder, if you get back on one-on-one interactions and not just a quote on a computer, then we can talk about the how you do things, the how I bake my bread. Why do I choose the right organic flour? Why do I choose this sourdough? Why do I let it rise for 24 hours? What's the difference? I can tell you about what I know about, what I care for, what is really important to me, and I know it's going to be healthier for you. And if we are on one-on-one, we're going to realize we share the same values. You want to be healthy, you want your family to be healthy, and you just want to be happy, right? So that kind of changes the consistency of the exchange. It's not only about how much do I sell my bread. It's also what is the meaning I put into what I do. So what's the energy that's actually going to you through my bread, And it's the same if we're talking about, building a canoe or like any kind of like services. Like if I'm a mechanic and I change the oil of your car or something like that, you know, there are ways to do things that are better than others, that are less harming to the environment. And if we get back on one-on-one and exchange on our values before we consume, we empower the person, we empower the professional to do things the best way he can for the human beings, but also for nature. And I think that kind of like solves our feel of being very isolated. And I think we feel more and more isolated and more like spread out, although we all most of us live in cities, you know.
Yeah.
But if we do that, then for some reason we just strengthen the links between each other, and we allow each person to do the best in his own field. And then I think everybody's going to benefit from that, but the planet is going to benefit from that too.
From stronger communities.
From stronger communities, and from people that do stuff with more meaning and according to values that are like deep inside them, because we all have the same values. I don't believe that anybody is really that bad, you know. I think we all want like to be happy, and we all want our families to be happy, basically. And it takes different forms, unfortunately. Yeah,
I think that's all really powerful. If I'm trying to distill down what you were saying, besides using a very, I'll poke fun at you here, but using a very French example of baking bread.
Sorry. You like my bread, though.
Yes, of course. Everyone loves French bread. It is the best bread. You're right. The bakery we went to was fantastic. I think what I'm distilling down is that if we're less transactional, so many things are so transactional, right? In that we go, okay, I just go to the store, I get this thing, I don't care about the person behind the register, and I don't care about where my food came from, and I don't care about whatever. I just get the thing and I just want it. And we love convenience, and we love quick transactions.
Yeah.
And so to slow things down and be more connected to where our food comes from, who's making our food, who's taking care of our products, who's repairing our products, so that I don't need a new thing and just getting a new thing all the time. Mm-hmm. That sounds like a pretty stellar little community I'd love to be a part of. But I do think that there's a movement of people who are trying to do that and trying to slow things down a little bit. It might take a little while for us to all slow down, but I certainly would appreciate that. I'd appreciate a few less emails every day. We talked about something last night on the drive back around a sense of accomplishment. And I thought that was really interesting because you were talking about, I feel like you're out there, you're doing your thing, freediving and surfing, and, it's kind of, what is that sense of accomplishment and what are we driving towards? And in trying to, I won't say fight climate change because you can't fight a weather system. You can adapt to it. But in the environmental movement, it can be challenging to have that sort of sense of accomplishment of getting to the next thing. It's a big, big challenge.
Yeah.
And the work ahead of us is really, really hard in general in life. I think, how do we find those, how do we feel a sense of accomplishment when tasks are monumental or when there isn't a box to check? Like we were talking about, if you're a free surfer, how do you feel a sense of accomplishment relative to a competitive surfer who goes, I won the contest, check, right? Like sense of accomplishment versus I'm out here surfing and doing things, I thought it was just an interesting thread how you were talking about that sense of accomplishment and how I think so many people are seeking a better title and more money and all those things. But at the same time, there are many people who are looking at you and saying, oh my goodness, look, you figured it out. You were saying you don't feel a sense of accomplishment, and yet you figured it out. Like you've gone off and seen the world. You are so accomplished as a surfer and a diver and all these things, and you're making a life out of it, and that's really cool. I don't know. I just felt like that was an interesting conversation thread.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's something that everybody's facing, the sense of accomplishment. Why are we here? What do I do with this beautiful life? Am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? What is the real, where is the good and bad, It's always that forever question. In terms of what we do for the environment, I think we need to downscale a lot, because the bigger picture is very scary and everybody is overwhelmed by this. And everybody is overwhelmed by that bigger picture, There is no other way, really. So how I did it personally is to really downscale the problem to my little life.
Community.
Yeah, but even starting from myself and then like looking at myself not being able to make it just being one, I can't be this as sustainable as I want without my community. It just doesn't work. I can only like be more sustainable if I can rely on other people and if I can build those relationships that are going to offer me solutions. Because if my goal is to do everything by myself, like I thought I could do at some point, when you're a bit naive, you think you can grow all these food, you can like repair everything all by yourself. You can't. It's just, or you may be able, but it's sad. It's lonely. And what is important is just to share, because you learn so much, then you want to share. So yeah, I think that's a good start. And then every action you do that's in tune with your conviction is just going to be a huge satisfaction. And that satisfaction is going to give you the smile. It's just going to give you the stoke to actually do a little more.
Yeah.
And it goes on like a snowball, and it actually goes a very long way. And what's so cool is that when people see you happy to actually go against the current of over-consuming, they already feel overwhelmed with consumption. And they are like most likely to adopt the little resolutions that you started with. And they are going to create their own snowballs. And it's just going to spread like that. And it is surprising to see how fast it spreads.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go away for a few months. And then when I go home, man, my friends, they have like solutions for things I haven't even thought about. There is no plastic in any of the cosmetics. It's like, how cool are you guys?
That's awesome.
So this is like their own snowballs, and they find so much happiness in doing it, Yeah. And this is only a small example, but it just amazes me to see how people are catching at that idea of having less and like acting in accordance to your conviction is just a way to make peace with yourself. And it's really cool.
Yeah. I think, it's funny on that thread of friends who then say, look at what I'm doing now, right?
Yeah.
And I think, you live by example, and, my wife, Annie, and I try to live by example as well. And,
we all need examples.
Totally.
Yeah.
And she's really a leader in this, in our home. She'll occasionally do a waste audit and go through our trash and say, okay, what's in our trash? What are we throwing away? And we realized we were eating potato chips. That was one thing. We still really love potato chips. They're in plastic bags. We went, you know what? We just need to give up potato chips. That's it. But I think, we do that, and we have friends and family who then will months later say oh, by the way, I saw your Instagram story or whatever it is. And here's what we're doing now. They love to show you, here's our thing. We've become those people in that community. And so I feel like Instagram and the internet in general can feel like you're shouting into the void of the fire hose of the internet, right? You're like, I'm doing a thing. Does anybody care? You get a couple likes and it's whatever. But then those moments happen and you realize you do have this community of people who pay attention and who are inspired by the little things you're doing, and they start to, snowball, like you're saying, right? It becomes an avalanche of good consumer habits, which is really great. So I am curious, we've talked a little bit about isolation and, community, I think in the face-to-face context and that sort of, know your baker, know your mechanic. Mm-hmm. But online communities are really powerful too. And so I'm curious, you as sort of an influencer, ambassador for Patagonia, et cetera, obviously you have an online influence. And so is Instagram net positive, net negative? What do you think of online communities as a powerful mechanism for environmental change?
I think it's a tool we can't do without nowadays. I think this is a very powerful tool, and we need to use it. We need to use all the tools we can. The man-on-man discussion, the online spreading the message, everything really. I think there is better uses than others in terms of social media. I think when it's used in a good way, without comparison, but more for inspiration, mm-hmm. I think it's a wonderful tool. I think it's a very powerful way to share messages and empower people to act, to take action, to take a pledge, to make changes, and commit to something that's just gonna grow into making more and more sense for themselves and also for people around them. I'm always a bit concerned of like younger people that might not have all the keys to understand what's behind. But, you know, that's kind of the challenge of modernity. Modernity has brought us amazing tools, but until we get burnt a few times, you know, we still have to play with fire. So I'm willing to play because that's definitely, we need that fire, right?
100%. 100%. I want to, we're going to come back to a couple questions, but I want to go to a couple fan questions. We did have, we had some people who had some interesting things to ask. I sourced a couple ahead of time. One question we had was around your representation, being a woman in surfing and in that environmental movement. And I'm curious what you think about the women's equality movement in surfing, as well as just kind of the tremendous uprising of women in science and women in the environmental movement. I mean, so many of the strongest leaders right now are women, and it's fantastic finally that it's happening, right? You have Greta Thunberg, she's incredible. You have Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, who's one associated with Pure, and she's an incredible leader in New York City. You have all of these, Jamie Margolin, Alexandra Villaseñor. You have all these incredible young women who are leading. Yourself, Kimmy, a lot of the Patagonia ambassadors on the women's side. Really, really impressive, right? And they're out there using their voice and their platform. And I just kind of wanted to ask you what you think of that. I think it's incredible. But being a part of that, I'm really curious. And we did have one person who said, I want to know what she thinks about her role as a woman in this movement.
I feel part of it, like every woman is part of it, I feel like I'm benefiting from that movement because I'm so empowered by everything that's happening, It just feels like your voice is louder for a good reason, for the right reason, right? It's just that it should be as loud as anybody.
100%.
Yeah, but also, I've never really tried to be less loud, I've always been proud to be a woman, and I've never really questioned that. I've always been myself, and myself involves to be a woman.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we as women, we don't know what it is to be a man either. You know what I mean? Like, we just do what we do. And what I'm so proud of being part of that gender is that we do things with instinct. I think that's the biggest thing for me about being a woman, is that we have a very strong instinct that if we're able to slow down all the little voices that are talking to us, we have a much deeper voice resonating inside us. And for some reason, I'll tell you, it's always true. It's always right. That little voice, or that very strong voice, it's like a bass. It's something that's like hard to understand by itself, but is so much stronger and deeper and like coming from the ground that it's absolutely necessary in the harmony, right? And that voice, that instinctual voice is something I wouldn't want to live without. I wouldn't want to be anything else than a woman just for that. Because anytime I feel a bit lost or like floating, I want to calm down all these other voices and listen to what my instinct tells me. It's a gift.
That was an incredible answer. Wow. I also think it's really interesting about that instinct and, women in the environmental movement. I think what's really interesting to me is how much you hit on community. And this is something I feel like, I don't have data points to prove this, but anecdotally, I feel like so many women I know tend towards community-based solutions and human-based solutions, whereas so many men come at it from a technology or financial thing. They're like, no, it's a carbon tax and we need some carbon capture, right? Whereas women are like, no, we need to rally our communities and think about how we build communities around solutions and right? You need that human connection. So it's going to be interesting as we go down this journey with this podcast, as I, meet men and women and talk to them about what they think, we need. Maybe I'll have an answer in a year or so of, whether women are all community based or not. I'm sure there's going to be overlap and it's all going to be mixed and great, but it's a fun journey that we're on. Another one was, what's one of the most important learnings that you've had in your environmental journey? If you really had to distill it down, like what's one thing that you've learned in this path over the last 10, 15 years, however long it's been?
I think it's something we talked about a little earlier, is that for some reason, I think I might have thought at some point that I could be self-sufficient. Like, I love that term. I wanted to do everything myself, grow everything I could, like grow all my food, repair all my stuff. I thought I could do it all by myself. And yeah, experiences told me it's not about that, and it wouldn't be fun. And it's only by mutualizing the skills and the knowledge that you actually get to be self-sufficient, but within a community. And that's actually how you get to be happy, which is a big one.
So we're all trying to figure out, right?
Yeah.
That's a great one. And finally, are you hopeful?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we all know that we won't really change the course of where this world is going, I think we all know that we won't change the course of how much the environment is changing, but we can slow it down and we can create bubbles where things go back into the right direction, I imagine it as every community as a little bubble, and the map of the world being just like a lot of little bubbles. And within these bubbles, having people that rely on each other, trust each other, empower each other to do better, and can sustain themselves with food, with intellectual food, with social food, all of that. So for that, I'm hopeful, because I think living within those bubbles is going to be great, because there is all this knowledge behind. We will be able to value the lifestyle that we create within those bubbles. And when you're able to value and want what you have, well, it's like nirvana, right?
I love it. You said it's easier to keep moving than to stay in one place. And I'm really curious. So, you've been moving around a lot.
Yeah.
You've been traveling quite a bit. Patagonia keeps you busy. You're telling a lot of great stories, chasing swells, etc. And I thought that line was really interesting, because I think so many of us just keep going, right? Keep putting one foot in front of the other, and just, that's how we get through it. And it is hard to sit in one place. It's hard to sit in one place and meditate. It's hard to sit on the bottom of the ocean with a rock on your lap and just be there and be present. And then, more tangibly in this world, it's got to be hard to, stay put when you're so used to picking up and going and being back and forth. So I'm kind of curious, what's next for you? Are you truly looking to settle and stay here in Tahiti or somewhere else? What does that look like for you? What's next? And, what does staying in one place mean for you?
I do think that it's easier to keep moving than it is to stop somewhere and be committed into a community, just because that's something I've always done. I've left home when I was 14 and I'm 33, and I just kept moving the whole time, and it's been amazing experiences, a beautiful school of life. It's been wonderful. But I think all of that was there to teach me something, and it's related to what I was talking about earlier, about like the fact that we can only live sustainably within a community. And so I do want to settle down, slow down, and bring my own participation to a community. That's what I'm doing here in Tahiti, but that's also what I'm doing when I'm back in France. I don't know exactly where life is gonna, make me grow the bigger roots, but I feel like that's what I'm doing in both places right now. And my instinct is gonna tell me.
Totally. What's next for you? Any trips coming up in the next year, 2 years? Any major projects or things that people should follow along?
I'm gonna spend the winter in France and kind of like rediscover the areas, like try to like move on to different locations in Europe. And it's not the fanciest project, but it's a very meaningful one. It just means like explore your own garden and see what it's like.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
And you mentioned, you're speaking at a conference?
Yeah, at the Me Convention in Frankfurt, mid-September.
Very cool.
I'm trying to share my life experience, and because not everybody has the luck, has the chance that I have to explore the world like I did the past 20 years. And, and I just want to share my understanding of it. And maybe it can help people to feel good where they are and dig even deeper into what they do, or it can help people steer their boat to something that is more meaningful to them. So yeah, I'm interested into doing that. I think it's not easy, because it's always easier to go somewhere new and have a new experience, but looking inside yourself and inside all your stories to best use them into telling a message I find it very painful. But I know that's necessary, right? I know that's what I want, like necessary for me.
Yeah.
It's my path, yeah.
That's cool. Well, I look forward to staying in touch with your presentation, seeing it when it's finished or whatever. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Thanks for coming with us on the trip yesterday to Coral Gardeners, and for all the work that you're doing here in Tahiti and around the world to try and, make the world a better place and share your story.
Thank you, Reese. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and for highlighting these projects, and for like using the voice of WSL to spread a good message that everybody really wants to hear.
Yeah, well, I look forward to coming back next year, hopefully, and seeing, improvement in the reefs, and hopefully we can really show an impact, by supporting Coral Gardeners and maybe Tahiti Surf Club and trying to help them protect this place. So cool. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again to Léa for all her help in Tahiti and for making the time to chat with us. You can find Léa online at Léa Brassy and check the show notes for links. You can also find links to our project Restoring Corals with the Coral Gardeners and the Glowing Gone campaign that we ran. It was the coolest thing that we did in 2019. We'll also, of course, link to some of our tips on what you can do to reduce your climate impact per the discussion we had, and to Dr. Austin Bowden-Kirby, who was super, super impressive. You can also find WSL Pure online at WSL Pure. Hit us up with an email, oneocean@wslpure.org. And that's all I got for this week. I hope you all are doing fantastic, and see you next time.